Welcome back, viewers, to the Tobago Updates Morning Show, and we have in studio with us Miss Cuquie Melville, manager of Team Trinidad and Tobago for the CARIFTA Games, along with Coach Arlon Morrison, and they are here to talk about CARIFTA 2025 and Team TNT's performance. Good morning and welcome, lady and gentlemen.
Good morning, and thank you for having us this morning.
So tell us, CARIFTA Games Team 2025, sorry. Success? Yes?
Indeed a success. It was a team that came out there and showed a lot of heart. We had a lot of determined athletes, and we were able to surpass the performances over the past few years, going back to 2010. So 2025 performances would have placed second on the medal table in comparison to our 2010 performances. So we are saying that, yes, we were indeed successful in comparison to the other years.
Okay, and just tell us, what was the experience like? I think, is this your first time managing Team Trinidad and Tobago for the CARIFTA Games?
So this is my first time as the manager, but last year I went as the assistant manager to Mr. J. Hugh Gordon. It was an exceptional experience, so I had the opportunity to learn and understand what is required of a manager. So this year they gave me the opportunity, and I want to say thank you so much to the entries for putting that confidence in me to manage a team this year. The biggest team, actually.
And I was not going to say this year the team was large, much bigger than I usually hear, because usually we probably have somewhere between 40-something to 50 athletes.
Correct.
And this year we had how much?
We had 78 in total,
right.
And 99% of those athletes made the standard this year.
Wow. So Mr. Morrison, just tell us, what has your experience been like being a coach with this team for CARIFTA 2025?
So my experience with this particular team was one where you saw a lot of the young athletes, because we did have a lot of young athletes on the team this year, most of whom will be returning next year. And there was quite a synergy between those who made the team for the first time and are young, and the ones that are experienced and will be leaving the age group. So it was a bit easy to operate most instances where the older athletes would have shared their experiences with the younger ones. And then it was a more driven and focused group of persons where the young ones were concerned, particularly those who were in their first year under 17, where they actually enjoy the experience. And I just want to relate a comment that one of the athletes made after she finished in the finals. Miss Eden Chiwa, who was actually the youngest person on our team at 13 years old. She came fourth in the 400 under 17 girls. And at the end of the race, she was like, "Sir, I was so close. And I was like, "That's okay. Good job. We'll see you again next year." So it just tells me that they wanted to be there to represent their country so well. And that is very inspiring to see.
Definitely.
So I don't know which one of you all will be able to better answer this, but what was really done differently this year than the past few years in the past?
Do you want to take that or?
So, what was done differently? I think the absence of access to facilities would have forced coaches to really go outside the box, because this year there was not the situation where there was free access to stadia for training purposes, as most of them are in different states of repair, and while the Hazy Crawford Stadium was closed for the relaying of the track. I think it also had to do with coaches deciding to up the game and provide the kind of support that athletes needed.
So, and what you would have seen over the past weekend, the events that we medaled in, that we placed, we had gold in, were those untraditional events. So you saw the horizontal jumps, we got gold in those events, we got gold in the middle distance. So the areas where, you could focus more on in terms of not utilizing the stadium itself, but long distance. You could go on the road, you could go on a field and run and increase your performances there. So we were able to see a lot of the improvement in those areas, and also in the multi-events. So those were the three areas that we were able to medal in and get those gold medals.
So moving forward, what would really be the plan to sort of maintain and even improve upon our performance from 2025?
So what we are looking at, when we compare ourselves to Jamaica and Bahamas, I mean, they are the juggernauts of track and field in the region, right?
Yeah.
So when we compare ourselves to their performances, what we would have seen is that their standards are set at a certain level, very high. So we have to now go back to the drawing board and decide and determine, okay, what is needed now for us to get to the next level? And what we found is that most of the athletes, or all the athletes that medaled, they would have actually surpassed the standards that we would have set for our CARIFTA team. So we now have to go back to the drawing board and consider, should we now up our standard so that the athletes and them can aim to something better, aim to something higher, and that will now place us on that pedestal in terms of competing against Jamaica and Bahamas. Bahamas, they set their standards very high. Jamaica, they set their standards very high, and that is something that we now have to go back to the drawing board. As you see, we had the biggest team this year, and it's something that we now have to determine. And also in terms of continuing to invest in our coaches, in our resources. I mean, without the coaches, the athletes, we don't have the athletes there, you know, so that's something that we will also have to focus on in terms of continuing to get those development programs for our coaches so that they themselves could step their game up and ensure that the athletes get to that next level.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I want to really talk now about the Tobago contingent that was a part of the national team. Would this year's contingent coming from Tobago, was it particularly larger than we've seen in past years?
So, coming from Tobago, probably it was about the same, but persons who were registered in Tobago-based clubs, because we actually have a couple of athletes who were here who are now based abroad, meaning Jamaica, the US, who would have been selected to the team. So their registration with the Tobago-based club would count as part of the participation rate for Tobago. This year we had a total of 21 persons selected, 20 participated. So it was our largest in recent years. Before that it was 19, and I think that was in 2019 and 2023, if I may be corrected. So the percentage of participation by the Tobago-based clubs was an improvement, and for that to get better, we need to really make a conscious effort to provide the financial and facility support that would be needed to have that increase.
And for Team TNT, or Team TTO, what was like the corporate support from? Because I know we got a significant amount of support from the government, from the state. But in terms of corporate support, I don't know if you'll be able to speak towards that.
Right, so definitely we had a lot of corporate support. We had NGC, we had B-Mobile, Visit Trinidad, the ministry itself. We had several corporate support, and that is something that we really want to hone in on, because without that corporate support, I mean, the government alone can't do everything, you know. So corporate TTE is something that we really depend on in pulling through our events. So there were several sponsors on board. And again, I want to take the opportunity to thank all the sponsors that came out and ensured that the CARIFTA Games 2025 was possible.
Okay. So we saw a number of excellent performances from Trinidad and Tobago track and field athletes, and I know you spoke about doing development programs for coaches and upping the standards so that these athletes could aspire to something higher. But I don't know if that would be something that could happen on an immediate instance. But if not, what do you think the NAAAs could do in the immediate instance to really keep an eye on and sort of keep working with those athletes that showed immense potential during the games? Because sometimes they may tend to fade off, they may tend to fade away. How do you keep them at least at that level until you could really implement the programs to take them higher? So
with the entries, I mean, we are the governing body. The real persons there or that are overseeing the athletes and the clubs. So we support, entries support the clubs, right, for the development of the athletes. What we have done, or in the past year, we had a pool of athletes that we had considered from last year's CARIFTA Games, and we would have used that opportunity to have development programs, development initiatives for them, preparing them for the upcoming 2025 CARIFTA Games. So we actually had several athletes that came out of the 2024 program, and they would have came into the 2025 pool. So what we are going to do now is to all these names that we have from this 2025 CARIFTA team, we're now going to place some additional focus on them in terms of ensuring that they are developed, investing again into the clubs themselves. And then, as I said, the investment, it comes, entry is function based on the investment from corporate TT and the ministry. Without that, we don't have the financial resources, so we are based on that, and we're hoping that the corporate sponsors and they will come on board to ensure that we are now able to invest and put that work into our athletes out there.
Okay. But to add to that, Ms. Melville mentioned that the clubs are the ones with the sole responsibility. And I think it's important for clubs to really take charge of their responsibility. Okay. We have a saying that it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
But at the same time, the structures within the clubs and how they determine their programs are to be for the young persons can lead to the improvement in the performances. And I say that from my personal experience, where I would have found the opportunities that were afforded through notification from the federation to go and advance myself in certain courses that would have allowed me to be able to do a better job as a coach. So sometimes the onus is on the club to really do what they need to do to advance the holistic development of the athlete.
Correct.
Okay, well, I was going to ask a question about implementing best practices and that kind of thing, but I guess that comes from higher up the ranks of the entrepreneurs.
Definitely, and as I said, it trickles down to the clubs. The clubs have to take the responsibility as well. We are doing the best that we can up there.
Yes.
It's up to the clubs now to impart what we pass on to them, onto the athletes that they.
Okay, and CARIFTA 2026, where is it going to be? Have you all started planning for CARIFTA 2026? Tell us a little bit about that.
So CARIFTA 2026 is now going to take place in Grenada. It took place in Grenada last year,
yes,
and it will be there again. I guess due to circumstances, they had to go back to Grenada. Grenada will, they had the opportunity to bid and get it again. For 2026, though, we haven't started planning because we are still at that phase where we have to tie up and do our reports, etc. To see what areas we could work on and focus on for the upcoming 2026. So that will be coming shortly, but at this point in time, yeah, we trying to tie up all the loose ends to ensure.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Cuquie Melville and Mr. Arlon Morrison. Thank you all very much for coming in and talking about CARIFTA 2025, where Team Trinidad and Tobago did exceptionally well. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a short break. We're going to ask you to help us out. Share the live, share the live, share the live. When we come back, we'll discuss Fashion Coda 7 with Ms. Nedra Waldron. We'll be right back after these messages.
TNTech is pleased to advise that its Roxborough Service Center has reopened. Starting Monday 10th